morning and welcome to Fantasy Football Code Red on Enravio.com.
You order the Code Red!
You don't have to answer that question.
I'll answer the question. You want answers? I think I'm entitled. You want answers? I want the truth! You can't handle the truth!
Hey, welcome back. We're here on Fantasy Football Code Red. We're going to wrap up Week 1 and give you a preview on Week 2. I'm here with my distinguished and knowledgeable co-hosts, the Commander to my left and Porterhouse over here on my right.
Hello.
All right, let's get right into it. Well, first of all, I got to give you props.
Jets. Jets. Then we followed up by losing on Thursday.
That's all right. You know, I kind of laughed in your face last week when you picked the Jets to win in Week 1, and they did.
You know what? I thought that they would play a very close game. A nice little 15-yard penalty from Devontae David helped me out, but I'll take what I can get.
So the Geno Smith era begins.
He already is more impressive to me than Sanchez has been in 4 years, so I'm fine. Even with 3 picks in the fourth quarter, I was
now
happy.
you got him because Sanchez is out. Going to be out for, what, 6 weeks?
He can't come back till week 11.
Week 11, okay. So he's out for a while.
And to me, that's too soon already.
And you know what? By that point, he's going to be an afterthought. So
Or if Geno gets hurt, they'll be showcasing him trying to get a 7th-round pick from somebody to get rid of him for next year. One or the other.
All right, let's get into a little recap of Week 1 top performers. You know, obviously we have to start. We talked about it last week a little bit, but we have to start with Peyton. Week 1, he was absolutely the player of the week offensively with his 7 touchdowns.
The reason why you beat us in the head-to-head matchups was only because of your one player, sir. Thank you.
I'm sorry, who was that?
Peyton Manning.
I didn't have Manning, did I?
Yes, you did.
No, he didn't.
No, you didn't?
He had,
I beat
Brady.
your ass
He had Brady.
Without Manning?
with Brady.
Oh, my goodness. I thought you beat me with Manning. My
No,
mistake.
I
My
did
mistake.
not, but we're going to get into that later, folks. So we have some bragging rights to deal with today.
And that goes to
For
you.
1 week.
And it's going to focus right here. All right, so we had Manning with an incredible Week 1 performance. How about some other guys who?
Well, LaShawn McCoy on Monday night, ripping
Yeah.
through the Redskins defense.
184 yards.
And again, we have to give Admiral props for he loved the Eagles going into the season. Downplayed it last week for whatever reason. If he just stayed there, he would have looked like a genius. And everybody, Deshaun Jackson, great game. Vic looked great.
Yeah.
And McCoy was just like dominating.
For 2.5 quarters, they looked like the best team you've ever seen in your life. And then they
took
kind
a
of
knee.
took the pedal off.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Right.
they took a knee
Took a knee.
and allowed the Skins to get back into it.
Listen, you know what? I'm staying on the Eagles. I like what they have this year. They're going to be a good team if they stay healthy. If Vic stays healthy, I think they're going to have a really productive year.
How about Anquan Bolden last week, guys?
Bolden,
Amazing.
208 receiving yards last week.
And, he was, what was he, a 6th-round pick?
They traded him for a
6th-round pick.
Yeah.
You know what? I didn't like him going to Baltimore. Getting him out of there and into the San Francisco offense is going to be huge for him.
And huge for Kaepernick, obviously. I mean,
Yeah.
Well, but it turns out we were saying that maybe Kaepernick's not going to be as good a player this year, fantasy-wise, because he lost Crabtree. Maybe he finds, of course, Davis has a great game, which we also said, is he going to be a stud this year, or is he going to be the same as last year? It turns out
Right.
off to a great start, so Kaepernick is going to be a top 10 quarterback, no doubt.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
I think so. Then we had Terrell Pryor.
nobody saw that coming except
Nobody
for
saw
maybe
that
the
coming.
Commander.
Well,
Commander was high on him. He was 3 for 12 in his last preseason game.
Yeah.
He said, don't sleep on him.
Listen, he rushed for 112 yards.
Well, that's the key. Now he's worthy of being on a roster. He's not a number 1 quarterback, but he's definitely a bye week fill-in, a second quarterback. I actually picked him up on 2 of my teams as my backup, just in case. You never know. He could be Kaepernick. He could be, Vic type guy, or he could be terrible. But it's worth a risk at this point in the year.
At this point of the season,
He's got the athletic ability to always, cause defenses a little bit of trouble.
The
trying
Colts,
to
the
do
Colts
read
couldn't
option.
catch it. He was most of the time that he ran, he would run out of bounds. They didn't even tackle him, so he was getting chunks of yards on the defense without them even tackling him. He just would run out of bounds. So I was surprised. by
Shane
that.
Vereen, a big week, and then unfortunately,
Out.
we won't be seeing him anytime soon.
And I again, before the season started, I did not like Ridley at all. A lot of people had him in the top,
I
first or
agree with
second
that.
round pick. I did not at all, and especially in a point per reception league, Vereen was definitely going to play. So it turned out week 1, he looked like he was going to be the featured back. Now he gets hurt, so back to Ridley getting 3 yards a carry.
And then you saw it on Thursday. They couldn't run the ball against the Jets.
Well, here's who's going to benefit by that is Julian Edelman. Julian Edelman is now, for the foreseeable future, going to be Brady's go-to guy.
It's the franchise. It took Amendola, we were texting on Sunday. It took Amendola 2 quarters to be injured already.
I think we had the over-under on him getting hurt at 1 game, and he was the under. So
I mean, if he plays 10 games this year, it'll be a big deal.
yeah.
I was watching the Bills game at that time, and I saw him get hurt, and I texted both of these guys. I go, it didn't take long for Amendola. And again, we said it before the season.
Yeah.
He's a number 2, a risky number 2 receiver, and it turns out he's already hurt. So.
Yeah.
A guy I thought was interesting last week was Larry Fitzgerald, and the reason why he had 2 touchdowns. Last year he had 4 for the whole season.
Right.
He was targeted in the end zone 4 times.
Right.
I mean, Palmer is going to make him have just a dynamic year, just because he's that good a receiver. I mean, he may not be Megatron, but he's right there in that next level. He's a stud.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And also, Adrian Peterson, I mean, I didn't even turn my TV on yet. He's got a 75-yard touchdown.
I know.
I'm like, and of course I don't have him in any league.
He was one of the guys that I used last week to play
Yep.
both of you guys.
78 yards on the
But
first
again,
play.
we'll get into that later. A couple other guys worth mentioning. Receivers, A.J. Green, a big week.
A monster.
Demarius Thomas, a big week.
Expected most weeks with, the Peyton Manning's
Yeah, and
in
even
that
Vincent
offense.
Jackson, 154 yards.
And I didn't think he was going to do much last week. I liked Mike Williams more. He had the touchdown, Williams, but Jackson had more yards. And the other guy, just to watch all season long, Reggie Bush, just a little bit. He's going to catch so many balls out of the backfield. And you saw the elusiveness last week against the Vikings. He was just in open
And he
field
still
all
has
day.
the speed. I mean, he flew through that secondary. They couldn't catch him.
Absolutely. All right, let's get into our man crush segment. I'm able to talk about my man crush and his week 1 performance 2 weeks in a row here. But Manning 7 touchdowns week 1. Now we've got the Manning Bowl to look at later today at 4 o'clock. Listen, I'm expecting another big week out of Peyton. I really am. I think the Giants' defense is still a little banged up. They weren't able to mount much of a pass rush last week against Dallas. JPP still looks like he's not 100%. I'm thinking Manning another big day.
I think so. I think both Mannings are going to have a pretty big day.
Yeah.
I think this game's in the 30s.
Start all your Broncos and your Giants this week.
Absolutely. And Jimmy Graham, week 1.
I said last week I figured 90 yards and a touchdown. I didn't go crazy, and he didn't have a big day, but he had a solid game. So I'm still if he does this every week, I'll be fine.
Yeah. Listen, he caught a crucial touchdown pass, game-winning
Yeah.
touchdown catch.
Didn't have as many targets as I thought he would have.
That's going to change this week.
And
Yeah, I think
I
that's
think
gonna
he'll be a
change.
big factor this week as well. I really do. I think he's a double-digit kind of reception guy this week against the Bucs.
And how about your guy, Jamal Charles?
They had put the Jaguars away so early in that game that he got 16 touches. He caught 3 balls in the first half for 23 yards. And, when they need him, he'll be there. I think he's good for 5, 6 catches a game, or at least targets. And I think he's good for 100 yards.
28-2 drubbing over Jacksonville, you're right.
he wasn't going to catch passes at that point.
He wasn't going to catch passes.
And Jacksonville, honestly, didn't really cross midfield until late in the game when Henny came in.
Yeah.
The Chief
field
defense
was tilted.
dominated him.
The field was tilted like this. The Chiefs were in their end the whole game. So.
All right, let's talk about some injuries. Danny Amendola, we talked about, and Gronkowski, both inactive Thursday night against the Pats. Razor-thin win over the Jets.
I tell you, I was impressed by the Jets defense once again. Even though Brady has a few guys to throw to these rookies, he's definitely not locked into these guys. They're getting targets, but like Kendrick Tompkins the week before had 14 targets, but only 4 catches.
Yeah, I mean, I have to
So
say
they're not really in rhythm right now.
the Patriots are a pretty underwhelming 2-0 right now.
Yeah,
Pretty unimpressive 2-0.
Two games
Soft
against 2
schedule.
teams that no one thought much of, and they're up +5 in points in those 2 games.
Yeah.
The other thing, the only touchdown they scored was on a missed coverage by Milner. They dropped a couple other opportunities, don't get me wrong, but it was just a guy that was left wide
It
open.
was a
I think
long
I could
drop.
have thrown that pass. It may not have been in stride, he may have had to wait for it, but I think he still would have scored.
Yeah, I agree. All right, a couple other guys that are injured. We talked about Sanchez. We also have Jacoby Jones out for, 6 weeks?
Right.
That's going to be a big hit. I think I was kind of looking for him to have a pretty decent season. And then Vic Ballard.
That's going to help everybody that has Ahmad Bradshaw.
Yeah.
I had Ballard as a sleeper last week because I figured Bradshaw wouldn't play much, and he had a solid game. It wasn't great, but he gets hurt in practice, not even in a game. So that's I have Bradshaw in one of my leagues, so I'm happy about it. But
Yeah. So now you're right. You've got Bradshaw. Who's their RB2 over there now? Is it going to be Donald Brown? Is it going to be?
Right now it's Brown. I mean, but they don't really like him that much.
No.
I mean, so they're gonna start auditioning people, and we'll see what happens after week 2.
And I was reading a thing a couple years back. Peyton, Peyton is in charge of the whole offense when he was with the
Right.
Colts, and his nickname, Donald Brown, is "Damn it, Donald," because Peyton was yelling that he missed a block or a read or something. So don't expect a lot out of Donald Brown, but he does have a lot of speed. He can break one every once in a while.
Yeah.
He's worthy of owning as a backup, especially if you have Bradshaw. So.
Yeah. Well, the thing is, Bradshaw is so injury prone.
Right.
He's going to miss a couple of games this year, so the Colts have to do something.
I
All
thought the
right.
Colts were interesting last week, by the way.
They were.
They put they really slowed it down when they went up. I mean, Luck came out 11 for 12, and then they really just stopped throwing the ball down the field. I was unimpressed with the way that they played offense. I was happy because it gave me a game to watch.
The whole
It was a
game
good
plan
game.
was bad. There was a bad game plan by the
Listen,
Colts.
I like the Colts this year. I mean, I think the over under on them for wins this year was 7.5.
You got to go over on that.
Totally over. I'm seeing them as a 9-10 win.
It's a weak division too.
It's a weak division. I don't see any reason they don't win 10
It
games.
it is a weak division. Then you look at it, and the Titans go into Pittsburgh and win. You don't
And
expect
the ugliest
that.
game of the weekend.
Oh, it was
by the way.
awful,
That
but
was-
you know
that
what?
was the second ugliest game of the week. The ugliest game of the week was the Giants-Dallas.
Well,
yeah, but at
no.
least it was entertaining.
That
to
was
watch.
36-31
Oh my
entertaining.
God, that was one of the ugliest games I've ever
It
seen.
was sloppy football.
The Chiefs in Jacksonville was ugly just because Jacksonville couldn't do anything. But the Jaguar, not the Jaguar game, the Titan Steelers game was just ineptitude
Ugly.
on two sides of the
Ugly.
ball.
Yeah. All right, let's get into our weekly stud picks. We'll quickly go over last week's picks. Last week I had Andrew Luck, Steven Jackson, Des Bryant, and Kyle Rudolph as my studs.
About 2 for 4 on that. Not bad.
I didn't do badly. Luck played very
Luck
well.
was great, and
Jackson did a good job.
he was solid.
Yeah.
But Bryant and Rudolph were kind of
Bryant not so much. Rudolph not so much.
yeah.
How about you last week?
Last week, don't have it in front of me right now, but I'm going to go on memory here. Last week, I know I had Charles as my running back, and he was okay.
He was okay.
I had
Very good.
Fitzgerald as my receiver,
Stud day.
and he was a stud day. My quarterback last week was Breeze, and Breeze was solid.
That's what do you
was good.
expect from him.
He did
Yeah.
what you could. And my tight end last week, I'm trying to remember who I had as my tight end last
Graham.
week. I had Graham, and Graham was okay.
Yeah, it's
So-
a solid game.
No, they were
No,
solid.
you
So
already-
all around, all 4 of my guys were pretty
Well,
solid.
Yeah, you had production there. I had Tony Romo, who had a very good game.
He
I had
did.
Reggie Bush, who had one of the 2 or 3 best days of the day.
Absolutely.
He was awesome.
Julio Jones had a solid game. Nothing
Caught a
great.
touch.
Yeah, he caught a touchdown, so that counts. And then I had, which his new name is now is Dudfeld. For some reason, I picked this guy to be a stud when he's really a sleeper.
Yeah.
But in fairness to me, I have 4 teams. Sudfeld is not on any of them, and Julius Thomas is on 3. So
Was
I'll
he
go
even
with that.
Was he even targeted last week, Sudfeld?
4 times, no catches, hurt in the 4th quarter. I'm like,
Yeah.
that's a disaster.
Yeah, I was surprised when you went with him as a stud, but okay.
It's more of a sleeper, but I went for it. What the hell?
All right, my duds last week, I think I was pretty on. I had Cam Newton, Chris Johnson, Steve Smith, who had a decent game, and Antonio Gates. I mean,
Well, 3 out of 4 you had on the money. Those
totally
guys
on
had
the
terrible
money.
games.
Steve Smith had a decent
He had a
game.
solid game. So.
Antonio Gates, 2 catches, 49 yards. Newton was horrible. Johnson, not a good
60,
game.
70 yards
Yeah.
rushing, not a non-factor in the passing game too.
Yeah.
Hey, Steve Smith caught the touchdown. That was really the
Yeah.
only remote thing that was there. I mean, I was against Russell Wilson last week, and for a half, I looked like a genius.
But he
He
still
did-
didn't have a great
Yeah,
game.
he
though, so.
did reach 300 yards. He threw that Hail Mary up there and won the game.
Right.
And I thought, honestly, I thought that the Panthers were going to win that game. For D'Angelo to fumble inside the 10 that late.
Yeah.
And then Wilson does what he does. He gets 2 first
winning
downs.
quarterback. He's a
gets
winning
2 first downs and cements the game away on a team that couldn't do much, all week long. I didn't like Vincent Jackson last week, and he caught for 150 yards. So
Yeah.
obviously, I was all over that one.
Yeah.
At running back, I'm trying to remember. Spiller, and Spiller did not have
No,
a game.
that was- you called that one.
So I was pretty good there.
Actually, with that too, I was surprised. Fred Jackson got half the
Yes.
half the touches, which I was stunned by.
Yes.
Because they said they were going to run him into the ground before the season, and they didn't do it.
and
I was
the thing
really
about
surprised by
Spiller is he's a Reggie Bush type athlete.
it. Right.
Yeah.
You get him in
Tremendous
space,
speed.
and he can take it to the distance every single time. It's not like LaShawn McCoy with just cutbacks. He can just simply outrun you.
Right.
And the fact that they don't get him the ball 20 to 25 times a game
I couldn't believe
is
it.
amazing to
Yeah.
me.
Yeah. about you
Myself,
guys?
I had RG3, and up till first 3 quarters of the game, I nailed it. And then garbage time, they're playing prevent defense, and it is fantasy, so you got to count it, But in reality, he was a dud.
Yeah.
But in fantasy, he put up good points. I had Eddie Lacy, who wound up scoring, so you can't say anybody that scores is not a dud. But he was 40 yards, unless it was the goal line touchdown, he wasn't a factor really. And I had my dud tight end was Jermichael Finley, who only scored once on the road, I think, in the last 3 years, and he scored. So I missed my duds.
All right, my sleepers last week. I had Phillip Rivers. I think I was pretty on with that one. 4 touchdowns for Rivers last week. Isaac Redman. I apologize for having him as my sleeper. Well, I think he was 8 yards on 7 carries. Was
Yeah,
that-
he
was
did
that
not
how
have-
many it was?
8 for 9 and a fumble.
Something like that. Just horrible game.
Did not have much of a game.
Horrible game at him. Emmanuel Sanders had a decent game,
Considering
considering.
the
I mean, he
game,
caught
yeah.
seven balls, 57 yards. So I not too much, to say about him. He was okay.
And Selleck had he scored, so a sleeper, he scored, so you got that.
As a nice sleeper, he did okay. I'm expecting actually a better week out of Selleck this week, but last week he was just
Scored
okay.
a couple balls and a touchdown. So.
Yeah.
Sleepers wise, again, I'm doing this all on memory, so I know I had Fred
Thank
Davis
you
at
for
the.
being
Totally
prepared.
I was not prepared for that. I did not write it down. This week it's going to be written, I promise you. Last week I had Fred Davis as my tight end, and he obviously didn't do a thing, so not much of a sleeper. I also mentioned Jared Cook, who I thought would have a good day. I should have let with him as my lead guy
Yeah.
because he had a monstrous day, and
He did.
he couldn't have been picked up in more leagues than I saw. He was outside of Thomas in Denver, and Hartline got picked
Cameron,
up quite
too.
a bit.
And Hartline, yeah.
I mean, but big pickups this week were,
Yeah, we'll get into some
Cook
waiver
was
wire picks and
Cook
pickups.
was one of them. I like Palmer as a quarterback. I thought he'd have a big day, and he did.
He had a good game, yeah.
He had a really good game. On the running back side,
I think he had D'Angelo.
I had D'Angelo Williams, and he had a very solid game, so I can't complain about that. And then my wide receiver is the one position I can't think of. But
Yeah, I don't
so
remember
who
who you
knows who I had? Who knows who I had? But I'm sure he was outstanding.
I had Matt Schaub, who had a tremendous game.
Yes.
I had Vic Ballard, who was okay, nothing crazy. Tompkins, I had a flyer. For some reason, Admiral was talking up Brady so much, I fell in love with all the receivers. So
Well,
but it didn't
Tompkins
happen.
actually-
14 targets he had, so it wasn't like they weren't throwing him.
And he also should have had a touchdown in that game.
Right.
He
So
should've.
it could have been a sleeper pick. And then I had Jordan Cameron, a tight end for Cleveland, who had a great game. So
Yeah.
I was right on the money with
Another
that.
stud with him, absolutely.
Yeah. Guys, let's take a break. We'll be back in a couple of minutes on Fantasy Football Code Red.
Stop putting it off and start painting it up today at Ben's Paint Station, featuring Benjamin Moore Paints, Sickens, wood finishes, paints, and professional paint supplies, ideal for contractors and homeowners, stain paints and epoxies, family owned and operated, in business for over 55 years, professional and experienced help, located at 2 locations, 55B Route 25, Coram, Long Island, New York, and 1495 Plaza Montauk Highway, Mastic, New York. Call them at 775-7435 and 775-8135. Ben's Paint Station, featuring Benjamin Moore Paints. Log on to the Enravio Advertisers page today.
Enravio.com.
East End Screen Printing and Embroidery. Shirts for as low as $3 with print. 631-281-TEES. That's 631-281-TEES. 1355F Montauk Highway, Mastic, Long Island, New York. Go to eastendsilkscreenprinting.com for more info.
Tomorrow's radio, right here, right now. Enravio.com.
Hey guys, this is Bonnie from Two Guys and a Chick Show. Watch us Wednesday night, 7 to 9 Eastern Time, where we talk about stupid news, email bag, and all-around BS. Two Guys and a Chick Show on InRadio.com, broadcasting to the world.
Good Times Magazine, New York's best entertainment paper for 43 years. Check out their calendar for all the latest music info, including New York City, Queens, Nassau, and Suffolk. Studio News brings you the biggest news about the hottest artists and sounds. Technobeat is your guide to electronica, techno, house, and dubstep. Packtrack keeps you up to date on the biggest events at the area's performing arts centers and theaters. Good Times Magazine gives you all this and more. It's bi-weekly and it's free. Pick up your copy today or visit goodtimesmag.com.
All right, we're back. We just want to clarify something here. We did remember.
Mike Williams was my other sleeper. He had 4 receptions and a touchdown last week. So
All right.
not bad. Not
No,
bad.
as long as the guys are scoring, you got to consider that a good day. So.
Yeah, you had a good day. All right, I just want to remind everybody we are taking phone calls, 855-446-7284. We also have some action on the chat box.
Absolutely. We got Vince from Brooklyn in the house.
Vinny.
And he wants to compliment you, sir, on a nice call you had for the Eagles.
Thank you.
Even though everybody laughed at you last week.
Yes.
You had the Eagles down. He also wants to ask us about some good waiver wire pickups for this week.
We're going to get into that right after we give you our studs, and sleepers for this week. We'll get into some waiver wire pickups.
He also loves my shirt, my little Joe Pesci wise guy.
I got dressed in the
So
dark
then
today,
Vince,
obviously.
So Vince obviously has great taste in clothing, and we'll leave it there.
All right. Thank you, Vince. All right, let's get into studs this week. Let's start off with quarterbacks. I have Carson Palmer this week. I'm loving him against Detroit this week. Cardinals faced a tough defense last week with St. Louis. Palmer still had a pretty good game, threw for 300 yards, 2 scores to Fitzgerald. I like him a lot this week against Detroit.
And Fitzgerald will play today, they said.
Yes.
And I think the Arizona Cardinals win that game, and I think Palmer's a big part of that. My stud quarterback this week, I'm going with Eli.
Eli.
Well, it's easy to go with Peyton, so I'm going to go with Eli. My thought is that Eli's going to outduel his brother. Giants are going to win. I think he's going to go for at least 4 scores today.
Your lips to God's ears, my friend.
I'm going to go with Cam Newton, who I'm not really high on. He's a guy, to me, I would target to trade in the second half of the year. Last year he did it. I traded for him, and he had a great second half. I think the Carolina gets off to a slow start, but today, against the Bills, I see maybe 2 rushing touchdowns, maybe throwing one.
Yeah.
That's a really good day for
I
him.
like him this week a lot more than I did last week.
Yeah, last week.
You hated him
I
last week.
hated him last week.
I started him last week on one of my leagues.
Did
So
you?
there you go. Had some 0-1 in 2 leagues.
Thanks for taking my advice.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, my running back this week is Doug Martin against the Saints. I love anybody running against the Saints. I think Martin's going to just have a huge day.
No, I think so too. I'm going to go with a running back. I think Maurice Jones-Drew is going to bounce back this week. I don't think Jacksonville's going to win in Oakland, but I think Jones-Drew is going to do everything he can. I was talking to the commander before. This is where he got hurt last year. Mm-hmm. This is where he started going backwards. So I think that Drew's going to really have a very strong game today.
Okay.
I agree with that. I have LaShawn McCoy, a no-brainer. He's a top 3 back. And I don't see San Diego stopping him, so another huge day for LaShawn McCoy.
Okay. All right, let's talk about wide receivers. I'm liking Dwayne Bowe this week.
Nice one.
I think it's a good pick. I think he'll have a solid game this week against Dallas.
Somewhere over the Dwayne Bowe. I'm liking him against
I would
the
leave that one
Cowboys.
out next week.
Can we edit that out?
Christine was chuckling in disappointment.
You know what? I mean, he didn't have a great week last week only because, it was a blowout.
No reason to throw it.
Yeah, against the Cowboys, that's going to be a different story. I'm expecting a pretty high-scoring game, and I think the Cowboys secondary has some issues. So I think Bo will have a nice week.
I'm going to go back to the well with Larry Fitzgerald again. I think he's going to have a monster game against the Detroit secondary. Victor Cruz is a guy that we'll definitely watch, but I'm going to lean toward Fitzgerald this week.
Okay.
I'm going to go with Randall Cobb. The Packers are home against that leaky Redskins secondary.
Yeah.
And he looked great last week all preseason. He was banged up, didn't do anything. Boom, comes out, first game, he's all over the field.
I think Nelson and Cobb had big weeks this week.
Yeah, I didn't think Nelson was going to do much last week.
Yeah,
I
I'm
was saying
surprised.
that he had 100 yards in the score, so obviously he had a very good week.
Yeah. My tight end this week is Jordan Cameron. Browns against the Ravens. It's at Baltimore, but I think Julius Thomas proved in week 1 what you can expect from a tight end, playing against them.
And the Ravens' linebacking core is obviously not as strong as it was last year.
Absolutely. So I think Cameron's going to get a lot of targets this week.
I like Greg Olson this week. I think in the Cam Newton, role that we're talking about, I think that he will be the guy that's targeted in the middle of the field. He'll be catching some balls all over the place, double-digit catches maybe this week, 8, 9, 10.
And I'll go back to, even though he's coming off a great game, I'll go Julius Thomas. Giants can't cover anybody in the middle of the field. Peyton's going to give him the ball. I would say maybe he has like 75 yards and a touchdown today, so I'll go with that.
Okay. How about our duds this week? Quarterback, I'm going with Worthlessberger against the Bengals. I think the Bengals' defense is going to be really solid this year.
They were good against the Bears. They blew their game. They blew that game.
Yeah, I
Pittsburgh cannot block. The offensive line is awful.
They can't block.
He's going to get
for
sacked
Ben.
8 times in that game.
They're going to have trouble running the ball. Ben doesn't have the weapons he had last year. Wallace is gone. I think Ben's going to have a rough day.
And again, the only way I see him having a good game is if the Bengals are up big and he gets garbage time points at the end.
Which could happen.
Could happen. But you got to go on that it'll be a little closer, and he is a dud.
I'm going to go out on a limb and say Drew Brees has a tough game today.
Oh, my man.
I think that Drew seems to struggle when they go to Tampa, seems to
Out of
struggle
the
when they go
dome,
to
too.
Carolina. Always struggles on those dirt games on the road at 4 o'clock for some strange reason. I'm going to say that, I'm not going to say he doesn't put up yards. I'm going to say he has trouble putting up touchdowns.
Okay.
I agree with that. I think that the Bucs secondary is going to give him a little bit of a hard time.
I'll go with Matthew Stafford on the road against Arizona. He could have maybe one touchdown, 300. He might have 300 yards if they're behind. If they're not behind, if they're playing a close game, maybe even like 200.
Yeah.
I'm not big on Stafford. He didn't really impress me last week. If Reggie Bush wasn't on the field, he would have had an awful game. So
No,
I'll go with him as a dud on the road.
I agree.
All right, my running back, I'm going with Arian Foster.
Mr. Split Carry?
Well, here's the deal. That's the deal with him.
He's unhappy.
I'm not giving up on him for the season. I think his workload will increase as the weeks go on. I think they want to try to conserve him a little bit at the beginning of the season. He can't handle the workload that he's been given the last couple of years. It's been too much.
And Tate looked good last week.
Tate looked good. Tate actually outplayed him.
He's quicker. He hits the hole a little faster. I mean, Foster's a stud. I'm not trying to downplay Arian Foster.
Yeah.
No,
But
Foster's
Tate looked
more
good.
of a read and react runner, and Tate has just hit the whole run.
But I do expect big things from Foster in the coming weeks. I think he's still playing his way into game shape.
I have Marshawn Lynch having a tough day today against the San Francisco defense. I think the 49ers are upset they let up 28 points last week. They didn't do well against the run, but I think that's because they were completely playing the pass. I think that Lynch will be the key guy, and I think that they're going to force Russell Wilson to beat them today.
Okay, I'm going to disagree with you on that one, only because I'm feeling a 100-yard day out of Lynch this week. I know.
If he gets 40 carries, he might get there.
Listen, I know the defense is going up against, but I just have a gut feeling.
It could be a tight running type game too, so if he gets 30 carries, he could get 100 yards, and he might too.
No, he just might.
I'll go with C.J. Spiller again. I know, not again, but I know you went with him last week. But something about Carolina's run defense, I was really impressed last week. They were all over the field. So I'm going to say, Spiller has an average at best day. And if Fred Jackson's getting the ball like he did last week, I mean, Spiller's value is seriously dropping at this point. So I'll go with Spiller.
All right, my dud receiver this week is Colston. Kind of building on what you started to say. I don't think he's going to have a big week this week.
Revis Island.
He's going to be covered by Revis most of the day. Revis may occasionally drop off on a Graham, but I think he's going to spend most of his time on Colston. I think that Breeze has too many other ways to go this week, and if Rivas shuts down Colston, he's not going to get a lot of targets this week.
I'm going to go with Mike Wallace.
Wow, that's a good one.
Again, I also didn't like him last week, and I don't like him again this week. I think that, I just think that he's going to get the double team. I think Hartline will be the guy that kind of gets himself open, just like last week.
I agree with
against
that.
And
Cleveland.
he really didn't really look Wallace's way last week. It was surprising. I don't think he was open. Well, Hayden covered him. He's an excellent cornerback,
Yeah.
so that had one thing to do with it. But he was throwing a Hartline the whole game.
Yeah.
It was crazy.
Yeah.
Myself, I will go with Fitzgerald. I will go against.
Wow.
I'll say he's a little banged up today, and I think the other two receivers have better days, Andre Roberts and Floyd. That's what I'm
Wow.
going to say.
That's a bold prediction.
No, well, you know what? Roberts is good. He's a real good receiver, and I think
Both
Floyd
of them
made
are
an
good.
amazing one-handed
Both
catch
of them,
last week.
that's a real good receiving core right there.
Yeah. All right, sleepers. My quarterback this week, Ryan Tannehill, at the Colts. He went up against a really tough defense last week.
Cleveland is a solid defense, definitely.
With a really.
Mike, we actually have a caller right now. Why don't we take the caller first, and then we'll go to we'll finish this up.
All right, let's do that. Who do we have, Christine? I'm sorry? Oh, hello, caller.
I'm not hearing
Hello?
Anybody there?
Not hearing anyone.
You know what? I think we may have lost our caller. Please try back again. We'll pick you up. All right, Ryan Tannehill, as I was saying, he completed 63% of his passes last week against Cleveland. To your point, with Hayden, I just think he's going to have a big week. I think he's going to go to Hartline often, early, and
Well, the Colts showed that you can move the ball in them. So
Yeah.
that's a nice sleeper. I like Tannehill as a sleeper too.
All right, here you
I'm
go.
going out on a big limb and saying Josh Freeman gets a little bit of.
This is my bell.
Yep, I think that Josh Freeman has a decent game.
Bell time.
I think he's going to throw for a couple scores. I think he'll run a little bit when he has to, and I think he'll keep the Bucks in the game against the Saints all day.
Yeah.
And I think he had two great games against the Saints last year. I know he
did. He
definitely
does
had
play
one
well
at
against
home
them.
because I remember Vincent Jackson had 200 yards.
Yeah.
He always plays well against the Saints.
I'm going to go with Jay Cutler,
Jay Cutler.
who everybody's down on. Home against the Vikings. Something I feel about Jay Cutler, 2 touchdowns, 300-yard day this week.
Yeah, you know what? I'm feeling that.
I got a question for you. If Jay Cutler talked to his receivers like Tom Brady did on Thursday night with the attitude, how would he be perceived? He'd be the biggest crybaby in the world. But
Well,
because
everybody
Bra-
thinks he's a crybaby
because
to begin
because
with.
Brady does it, nobody ever says boo. I just find it
Well,
interesting.
he's a winner.
Yeah.
You don't question guys that win. You
No,
question
I
guys
gotcha.
that lose all the time, and he's one of them.
You know what? I think we have our caller back up. Who do we have, Christine? Hey, we have Greg. Greg, how you doing today? Is this the commish? How you doing today, commish? All right. Calling in from Fantasy Baseball Code Red. What do you got today, commish?
He must be on his cell phone or something because he sounds like
We've
he's
cut out
freaking
a couple times now.
Yeah, I think he must be on his cell phone. We'll have to get back to the
He's got
commish.
nothing good to say anyway.
All right, let's move right along to our running back sleepers. I'm going Eddie Lacy this week. I like him a lot this week. He was kind of shut down last week against the 49ers, but you expect that. He did wind up with 71 yards and a touchdown on only 15 touches. I think he's going to see the ball a lot more this week, going up against the Redskins defense.
McCoy lit up,
McCoy
yeah.
just tore them apart last week, and I'm not saying Lacy's McCoy, but I'm expecting a nice day out of Lacy this week.
I'm going to ride go back to the well here with the Angelo Williams. I think he's going to have another pretty good game against Buffalo.
Okay, I'm going to go with Ahmad Bradshaw. Now with Vic Ballard out, the Dolphins do have a tough defense, but I expect them to get involved in the passing game, and I expect them to have a nice day today.
Yeah, I
A
think
touchdown and at least 100 total yards, I'll go with.
He's going to be a big focus of that offense today. My receiver this week, Marlon Brown. I like this guy.
Big dog.
A lot of people like him. A lot of
You
people.
know, first of all, he's 6'5", 216 pounds, and he's fast. But with Jacoby Jones out for the year, I think that Brown is now.
And he threw his way. Flacco threw his way.
Yeah,
I mean, granted they were down, but still.
He's a
he
strong
threw
number
his way.
2 guy, and Torrey Smith is going to see Hayden this week. So I think.
That's a good pick. I like
Yeah,
that.
I think Brown's going to get open. I think he's going to be targeted, and I like him today.
I mean, when I look at it, I think Ruben Randall will have a good game. I'm going to go with Sidney Rice as a real sleeper. I think that Sidney Rice is going to find a way to catch maybe 5 or 6 balls, get in the end zone once, maybe catch about 75, 80 yards.
Okay. I'll go with Cecil Shorts. Henny is starting, so Henny can actually throw the ball.
He's better than Gabbert.
Unlike Gabbert. And he's a very good receiver, so Raiders secondary spotty. I'll go with Cecil Shorts. Have a nice day.
Okay. Finally, tight ends. I'm going Brandon Myers this week. My Giants against the Broncos. If you watched last week, what Dallas Clark did last week, he was targeted 17 times. And, I think the Broncos secondary and their linebackers are going to struggle.
A lot of guys are banged up. Woodward's not playing, I guess, so there could be.
And you know what? Myers saw 9 targets last week. Had 7 catches and a touchdown. So I'm liking him this week.
And I know Sean Phillips had a couple sacks last week,
He had
but
a
that's
great
not
game,
the same
yeah.
pass rush.
Yeah.
And you lose Dumerville on one side and Von Miller on the other, and it's just not the same.
Yeah.
Tight end, I'm going to go with Kobe Fleener. Allen's hurt, and for the Colts, and I think that Fleener will get all the tight end looks this week, and I think he'll have a pretty good day.
And I'll go with Pettigrew on Detroit. Even though I don't like Stafford this week, I think Pettigrew was invisible last week. So I like to play guys that didn't do anything as a sleeper the following week, expecting him to be open. Cook had a monster game against Arizona last week. So I'm going to say maybe Pettigrew will be the number 1 guy for Detroit this week.
Okay.
All right.
All right, let's move into, for Vince in Brooklyn, let's move into our waiver wire selections. That's brought to you by the Village Music Shop of Mastic, which is the Admiral's favorite music store. Quarterbacks, we talked about Pryor earlier in the show, but, he's probably a guy that was out there on the waiver wire. Certainly worth a pickup.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, with his speed alone, makes him a definite guy that you have to look at.
Well, we mentioned Terrell Pryor before. If Julius Thomas is not in your league by now, then you're going to win the league because he should be on somebody's team.
And on the other tight end I'll recommend is Dallas Clark. He was a big part of that offense last week, and I see him.
He came out of nowhere, really.
Came out of nowhere.
Yeah.
I've always liked him. He was always a guy, if he was healthy, he was just a great tight end. But I like him this year. I think I like him as a backup tight end at a minimum.
Oh, no, he should be on a roster, no doubt
No
about
question.
it.
Fleener is another guy to look at tight end, just because you don't know what Allen's health is going to be. Fleener was the tight end for Luck in college, and
Stanford,
it could
right?
get that rapport right back like they had in Stanford. I think he could be a guy that you can definitely look at.
Yeah.
Another guy that you mentioned before, Commander, was Andre Roberts, who I happen to think is a real comer. I think that they're going to throw the ball around the yard a lot.
Well, they can't run, so they're going to be throwing the ball. I mean, Mendenhall was solid, unspectacular. The backups did 0. So you have to figure the Cardinals are going to be in a lot of high-scoring games this year.
Yeah.
Running
backs.
There was one other guy I had that we talked about was Joique Bell.
Had
If
a
you
big
have
game.
Bush, if you have Reggie Bush, make sure Joique Bell you have a handcuff, because if Bush does get hurt, and he does,
Yeah.
well,
Well,
he'll
he's
miss
already
a game
banged
until-
up. He's already banged up.
he hurt his finger, he jammed his
Yeah.
finger, trying to catch a pass. So Joique Bell needs to be owned, no matter if he's out there, grab him, guys, because he's going to vulture the touch goal line, and if Bush gets hurt, he'll be starting. So.
And James Jones is another guy that was the 3rd receiver on Green Bay, but as they get their offense going, he's going to be a guy that's going to just catch touchdowns and a lot of
He
deep
was
balls.
a guy that a lot of people targeted, and not so much Nelson going into the drafts for all these leagues, and then now Nelson has a great game. Now Jones falls off the map,
And-
so you can't go on 1 week.
Anybody interested in Brandon Jacobs?
Not yet. He's got to show me a little something.
It's a very interesting situation there in the Giants' backfield because Coughlin does not like guys who fumble, and
I don't know any coach that does.
well, but Coughlin in particular, and he was able to fix guys like Tiki and but I got to tell you, Wilson, I think is very close to being in the doghouse. So you've got Jacobs.
I think the Giants lost the game because Wilson didn't play. If Wilson was in there, that screen pass is not hitting off the shoulder pads and picking off a touchdown.
Well,
but
I think Scott's going to see some more action, and you know, if you don't have him yet, Andre Brown, I think, is going to be a pretty big part of that offense in a couple of weeks. So, you know, that's an interesting situation. And then wide receivers, we got a ton of guys out there that are worthy of being picked up. I mean, Julian Edelman. We talked about Marlon Brown, Brandon Gibson, Andre Roberts, even Hankerson.
Yeah, Hankerson's a guy that he caught touchdowns last year as well. He had a pretty good season in his first time out with RG3 last year. Garcon will still be the number one guy, but Hankerson's going to be a solid 2 for them.
well, they do start Santana Moss, so he's really coming in on third downs until Santana Moss kind of fades into oblivion.
Which he
because
will.
And Santana on that third down moves into the slot, so he's
Right.
going to be catching 8-9-yard passes.
Yeah.
Hankerson's the guy they sent for the.
Doug Baldwin had a nice game for the Seahawks. So
Another guy that might be out there is Hartline. You know, I saw him.
I picked him up in the league.
Yeah, he wasn't drafted in a lot of leagues.
Well, because Wallace came there, people figured, you know, he's going to take a chunk of the targets, but that wasn't the case.
No.
And after this week, in 2 weeks, Blackman will be back in Jacksonville.
Yeah.
Another guy that has potential to be a top flight receiver. Honestly, Jacksonville's better off when Henne plays than when Gabbard plays. If Henne somehow wins the job, I think that Blackman and Shorts combined can be a very nice
Blackman's a
receiving
good pickup
core.
at this point. We had another. Vinny wanted to know about Josh Gordon with Cleveland. He's supposed to be a 2-week suspension, back week 3.
Yeah.
He's an explosive guy. So I would keep him. I would not drop him. I would keep him on my roster.
You have anything else up there? I can't.
No, that's the last thing we see.
All right, so that wraps up our waiver wire segment. Let's get into what's going to be my favorite segment this week.
So far.
This week, we've got our hosts head-to-head competition. Last week, we told you guys that we each individually drafted teams. We're going to go head-to-head, the 3 of us each week. The Admiral came out on top this week.
He did.
I'll take the pat on the back.
You did have Thursday night guys, so I'm going to protest and put an asterisk next to his name.
You're not protesting.
Yes, we are.
Wait a minute. We
No,
did
we'll
the
give you the
draft
win. We'll give you the
before the
Even though it was
Thursday
your
night
weakest,
game.
even though you finished third in that position, by the way.
All right, listen, we
We
had
both
that
have
draft
quarterbacks
done
here.
before that Thursday night game.
All right, that's
so
fine.
don't try to mislead the 6.8 billion people that are watching.
We
right
got to
now.
bring you down somehow. So.
All right. Well, listen, you know, the way it worked out last week, I came in first place, 168.82 points. Followed pretty closely by Porterhouse at 158.36.
And that's
then,
with a bad game from Calvin Johnson.
Calvin Johnson.
Yeah,
killed
we'll
him
get
last
into
week.
it a little
And
bit
he had 2
further.
touchdowns called back. One he landed and fumbled. The other one was the back of the end zone.
This
So
guy's stalling because he doesn't want me to
that's all right.
reveal his 106-point
Yeah.
effort this week.
I put Sudfeld out there. You know,
Yeah.
I could have taken the one that's stud tight end.
Listen,
so
you
I
had
went
2
for it.
positions where you got 0 points. New
Yeah.
England defense, and I'm not sure if Christine can get this up there, but and Sudfeld
Yeah, so
and New
that
England
hurt.
both got you 0 points. Des Bryant 6 points. You know, so you
No,
got
there
a
were
rough
just
week.
some studs that just didn't come out.
Yeah,
for you
Martin
guys.
had a horrible game against the Jets. I didn't expect that.
Alfred
you
Morris
know.
had a bad game.
Well, they were behind, so he's
couldn't run it.
not a catching. You know, he doesn't catch a lot of passes. So Morris was worthless.
Yeah. I had, really what brought me in this week was Peterson, almost 32 points. Andre Johnson, 26 points. Fitzgerald, 28 points. I think what hurt you most, you probably would have won this week if it wasn't for Megatron.
Yeah, Calvin Johnson, again, the 2 touchdowns, trying to
Yeah.
stretch one over.
Yeah.
That cost me a lot of yards and a touchdown. I would have probably won it right
I mean,
there.
you had
pulled it
Green
out.
with 37 points. You had Vernon Davis with 27
That was a nice
points.
one. Vernon Davis was a nice
Vernon
one.
Davis and A.J. Green carried me through.
All right. So our standings week 1, we've got the Admiral at 2-0. We've got Porterhouse at 1-1, and rough week for the Commander. He's 0-2.
I'll be back. I'm always
Be
back.
Well, let's talk about
Don't
it.
be surprised that after week 3 that we're all 3-3.
All right, well, let's talk about this week. We did our little mini draft. I don't know if you can get that up, Christine. And what we're doing, week to week, we're rotating the first pick. So I picked first week 1. This week we had Porterhouse picking first, Commander second, and I was third. We'll go through each team. Go ahead.
Want to go position by position across?
Okay, why don't you go down through your entire draft?
Okay, I took Aaron Rodgers, quarterback, LaShawn McCoy, Reggie Bush, Demaryius Thomas, Brandon Marshall, Jared Cook, Randall Cobb as my flex, Zerline, Greg the Leg, and the Bears defense. I'm expecting 200 points minimum out of that.
200 points.
Put it down.
All right. What do you got, Porterhouse?
I went with Peyton Manning as my quarterback. Because he was still sitting there, I took Adrian Peterson as my running back.
Nobody
There's no
wanted
reason
him.
not to.
Despite the matchup.
I went with Alfred Morris as my other running back. Wide receiver, I went Fitzgerald and Jones, two guys that are questionable but should both play. Tight end, I went Jimmy Graham. My flex is Victor Cruz. I have Prater as my kicker, and the Houston defense, the Texan defense against that vaunted Titan offense.
And did you see my boy Cushing pick that pass off?
He did. You talked about him last week.
We talked about him last week.
You want to throw out a point prediction for yourself this week?
I'll say I can get 175.
Nice.
175. Okay, listen. Both of you guys are predicting more points than anybody had last week, but I like that. All right, I'm going this week. My quarterback, Drew Brees. I don't care what the matchup is.
He's going to put up points.
I don't care what the matchup is. He's going to put up points. I'm loving my RB1, Doug Martin, this week. Charles, I think, bounces back with a big week at RB2 for me. Loving my receivers. I've got Calvin Johnson this week and Green. Tight end, you know what? I went with Witten over a couple of other bigger name guys. Not that Witten isn't a big name, but I just think he's going to catch a lot of balls this week. Loving Forte at flex. I have Brian as my kicker and Denver as my defense. I went over a couple of other
I'm surprised
defenses.
you went with that.
Well, here's what my feeling is. I'm seeing a better performance out of the Giants' offense this week, but I hate to say it. You're gonna see a couple of picks, against Eli this week. One might be a pick six. He's gonna get sacked a few times. That's why I went where I went.
I think there were a lot better matchups than that one, but okay.
All right, I think I'm gonna surprise you
Plus,
guys.
now you're rooting against your favorite team now.
I never root against my favorite
It's a
team.
no-win for you.
I never root against
I
my
have
favorite
Witten as a dud this week. I
Okay.
don't think we went over that on our tight ends. The Kansas City linebacking core is very active, very athletic. I see more wide-out action for Dallas than Witten this week.
I agree with you, actually. I think that Kansas City is more vulnerable in the secondary than they are in the front seven.
We'll see what happens, but if you're predicting 200 points for your squad, you've got 175. I'm going 201.
All right. That's fine.
You're going to lose it on defense.
Nah, I don't know about that. We'll see. What else we got?
Want to go over the matchups for the week?
Yeah,
or-
let's run through the
Schedule?
the schedule this week and see what we have going on.
Here we go.
New England and the Jets. We saw that game already, so we won't go there.
Spread was 12.5, and the Patriots only scored 13. There you go.
You know what? I went with New England on. I thought they. Yeah, you know what? I thought they were going to crush the Jets this week.
You say that every week.
I wasn't
do.
impressed with New England the first week. That's why I took the Jets in that
Yeah.
game.
You know, I should have been smarter knowing, that the injuries.
And
were probably-
Vereen wasn't there. That was
Yeah.
a big hit for them. Vereen.
Well, and Amendola and Gronkowski. So we should see Gronkowski next week, and we're looking forward to that.
Will he be the same player?
Yeah, I think he will be.
I don't. I think
I
one big
hear
hit
he's
and
working hard, and I think he's coming back strong.
Guy gets hurt a lot.
He does. He does. What do you guys think of Philly, San Diego this week?
I think San Diego had a crushing loss on Monday and has to fly across the country, and I think Philly wins this game.
It's a really bad spot. Those teams from California going across off of Monday night. It's a bad spot for San Diego.
Yeah, I'm sticking with Philly this week. Baltimore, Cleveland?
Cleveland never beats Baltimore. I think I'm not sure about the spread or anything, but I think Baltimore wins the game.
You know what? The spread is 6.5. It's at Baltimore. I'm liking Baltimore this week.
Home opener. They should have been home opener last week, but because of the schedule conflict with the Orioles, they had to play in
You know what? I'm not seeing guys
Buck
like
Showalter.
Flacco have a big week.
Yeah, Buck wouldn't let him go.
Yeah, I think the Ravens are going to win by a touchdown. I don't think you're going to get a big week out of Flacco. Rice might have a decent day, but I don't think Torrey Smith has a big day.
Well, you like Brown, so maybe Brown will score.
I
a
like
touchdown.
Brown.
I thought Whedon would play well last week. He threw 3 picks and
He
got
was
sacked
awful.
6 times. He was
Yeah.
awful.
But you know what? Cleveland was moving the ball, and then once they got on Miami's side, they would turn in the ball, and I don't know what happened. They were moving it, and then boom, they would stop.
Yeah. How about Tennessee at Houston?
I love the Texans this week. I think Tennessee gets out. If you tell them they're going to start the season at Pittsburgh and at Houston, and they're going to go 1-1, they're going to be
They'll
ecstatic.
probably sign up for that, yeah.
Yeah, there's no way they go 2-0. But and the spread on that one I think is 9.5. So I don't see them winning that game. I think Houston's going to have a good game.
Locker was one of my sleeper guys last year. He's a really good athlete, but he just hasn't really picked it up yet. And it's a tough place to play in Houston.
He's
so.
quick. He's not accurate on the move, though.
Yeah.
This is going to be a good game. Miami at Indianapolis.
Very good game. Ton of fantasy value yet for Miami. More sleeper guys. Well, you talked about Tannehill being a sleeper this week. So, but you gotta like the Colts at home. Luck plays great at home. He should have another tremendous game.
Should be a good game. One of those teams will be 2-0.
Yeah.
Good start.
Absolutely. Carolina at Buffalo.
We're not watching that unless you have somebody playing on that. Well, actually, there are a lot of fancy guys on those teams.
There are a couple.
It's not really a great game.
Atlanta at home against St. Louis.
Banged up Atlanta team. You never know. St. Louis might go in there and surprise somebody.
I think Atlanta still puts up 31 against them this week. I think if the Cardinals could do it last week, I think that the Falcons can do it
I think that'll be a closer game than people expect.
Steven Jackson motivated, though, maybe against his
Steven
old
Jackson
team.
is going to want to run all over those guys, and he probably will. Green Bay at home against Washington.
I wasn't impressed with the Redskins on Monday night, so I don't see why Green Bay won't go up and down the field on them.
I think they're going to go up
Biggest
and down.
improvement for teams is from week 1 to week 2, so we'll find out what Washington
Right.
has.
We'll find out what Washington has, but I think you're going to find out more what Green Bay has this week. Kansas City at home against Dallas.
Should be a good game.
Should be a good game.
Yeah, I mean, we don't know what Kansas City is yet. Jacksonville was that bad last week.
Yeah.
Dallas, the game was given to them by the Giants, basically. The Giants outplayed them in every facet except for turnovers, of course.
Right.
I think that's Andy Reid's home opener. I think the Chiefs win it.
Then we have Minnesota at Chicago.
Gotta like the Bears at home. They should be running the ball. I like Cutler. He was my sleeper quarterback this week. So wasn't impressed with the Viking defense at all last week.
It was awful.
Yeah,
I'm looking for Forte to have a pretty big day.
I think it's a closer game than everybody thinks.
It'll be a
I think the
closer
Vikings
game, but
cover.
I don't think
Well,
Peterson.
Cutler will probably throw a pick 6, and then they'll get him back in the game.
Yeah, and I don't see Peterson having a huge day.
They're going to give him the ball, though.
They're going to give
He's
him
gonna
the
get
ball,
the
but I
ball
don't see him
because
having a huge
Ponder's
day.
not a quarterback.
No, even
Not in this league.
Ponder had a halfway decent week last week, but not happening this week.
Not in this league.
No. New Orleans at Tampa Bay.
Think it's got to be a high-scoring game. They usually are. So.
Upset special. Tampa wins outright.
Nice. The Jets, now it's Tampa. We'll see what
Tampa wins
happens.
outright this week.
You know, I wouldn't be shocked. I wouldn't be shocked.
They have to play better than they played against the Jets, though. They played awful.
Yeah.
The Jets did play good defense. I'm not saying that they didn't, but they were just a mess last week, Tampa. So.
Is there a defensive coordinator that's done less that gets more TV time than Rob Ryan? I don't think it's possible.
Yeah.
They show him constantly.
It's amazing.
You're right, they do. That hair, something about the hair, they love watching.
You saw him as much as you saw Peyton last week. You'd think you'd see Peyton constantly.
We have Detroit at Arizona in what should be a pretty high-scoring game, I would think.
I would think so too. I like Arizona at home, but you know what? It's going to be a very, very good game. That'll be a fun one.
I think it's going to be who hooks up more, you know, Stafford and Johnson or Palmer and Fitzgerald.
I agree.
But he has
Oakland.
Peterson covering him now. They said Peterson's going to follow CJ all over the field. So I'm not expecting.
Good luck with that.
And the Honey Badger looked good last week.
Yeah.
Teron Matthew is really solidifying that defense.
Yeah, that's a great draft pick by them because he was a guy that had a lot of off-field problems, and then they were getting a guy with a high upside if he stayed problems off the field.
First round pick if he didn't have all those problems outside.
Yeah. You want to give us Oakland?
Well, unfortunately, it's going to be an ugly game. Usually they are.
It's at Oakland.
I like the Raiders to win by a field goal. They always play bad against bad teams. Not that they're horrible, but for some reason these bad teams they play, they never come to play. The better teams, they usually are better at home.
Right.
But these bad teams, I like a close Janikowski winning it with a 50-yarder at the end.
You know what? I like McFadden in this game. I also like Drew in this game. This is going to be a weird game, I think.
Kick a controversy this week. I mean, Scobie said that Janikowski is rooting against the A's so that
they don't play in the
so
field.
They don't play on the field, so they don't have to play on the dirt as long.
Too bad.
And Janikowski denied it and said he's not going to speak to Scobie this week. So very interesting.
Denver at the Giants.
I like the Giants to win the game.
I think it's going to be an entertaining game. I'd love to say I think the Giants are going to win, but I'm not so sure.
That's not my little, tip the cap over here, but I think the Giants will be real close.
I see Peyton pulling it like a 2-minute drive at the end, kicking a field goal, maybe winning it that way.
I think it's going to be a good game. I think you'll probably see a pretty good amount of offense. I think what it's going to boil down to is how many mistakes Eli makes.
Could be right about
/ Wilson.
Yep, absolutely.
If they can keep from the turnovers, I think the Giants have a really good shot. Whether that's going to be the case or not, remains to be seen. Seattle at home against San Francisco.
Should be a slugfest. 17-14 written all over it.
I think Seattle at home wins. Best home field in the NFL.
I agree. But it's going to be a low-scoring, very close game. I like Marshawn Lynch in this game, even though you don't. It's going to be an interesting one.
Yeah, because Kaepernick showed he's a winning player, and Russell Wilson, that guy is a winning player. He just wins games. Doesn't look pretty,
right?
But he's just a winner, that guy.
And then we've got the Monday night matchup with Cincinnati at home against Pittsburgh.
One of these teams is going to be 0-2, and I don't think it's going to be Cincinnati.
And Porterhouse, I think, will be sleeping by halftime of that game.
Yeah, I think so too. We got a phone call.
All right, you know what? Let's wrap up the show with a phone call. Hopefully we can get this going. We have the commish back? All right, commish.
No, Chuck.
Chuck.
Oh, Chuck. Chuck, how you doing today?
We lost.
We
Chuck
appear to
there.
be having some phone issues.
Very, very big issues this week.
There was somebody that sent a tweet out. Should you hold on to Sudfeld on New England? And I say no.
No.
At this point, he's banged up. Gronkowski will be back at least by week 4 minimum.
I'm
No
thinking
point
there's a
having him.
good chance Gronkowski is back next week. If not next week, definitely the week after. And Brady is dying to get him back. And I think Sudfeld's going to be, drop material.
I was surprised.
Right
He looked
away.
so good in the preseason. I'm like, he's going to come out and have a game, and he just did nothing.
Yeah.
No, he did absolutely nothing. He was useless last week.
Yeah.
I was
So I would say
surprised. I
it's-
thought he would have a pretty good game.
Listen, we all know Brady. Brady likes to go to, who he's comfortable with. And there's going to be no one that he's more comfortable with than Gronkowski when he comes back. And, I think Edelman still is going to be a big part of that offense. But I think Sudfeld is...
Plus, there's a lot of emerging tight ends out there we just discussed today.
Yeah.
There's no point in having Sudfeld on your team.
Yeah.
And I also could see the Patriots bringing in a couple of veteran wide receivers to work out next week. If the Patriots, if Brady was that frustrated with who he's working with, they're going to bring in a couple of guys that they might have had in the past that they've released.
Maybe Lloyd comes back.
That's what
Who
I was
knows?
thinking. I think that Brandon Lloyd might be a guy that comes
Lloyd,
in.
supposedly somebody made Lloyd an offer and he didn't accept it, so we don't know the team. But
And for me as a Jet fan, I can't understand why I can't bring Braylon Edwards back. At least he'll catch the ball. Clyde Gates can't, so why not go with someone that
Hurley's
can?
hurt.
I don't understand that either. All right, so order up your pizza, your Chinese food in my case. Jump on the couch and watch some football today, guys.
Absolutely.
Looking forward to week 2.
Go Bucks. Beat the Saints.
Wow. All right. I'll be texting you at 3:15 or so. See what's going on.
All right, thanks for tuning in to Fantasy Football Code Red on radio.com. We will see you next week. Good luck and enjoy the games.